The first time I heard about humans, I laughed so hard that my breathing slits nearly sealed shut. Can you believe it? These pink, squishy creatures with their pathetic single hearts and their ridiculous obsession with something called coffee had somehow managed to spread across half the galaxy. My colleague, Zerk, was practically vibrating with amusement as he showed me the intelligence reports. Look at this Kex. Zerk's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among our species. They have no natural armor, no venom sacs, no electromagnetic discharge capabilities. How do they even survive their own planet? I studied the holographic projection floating between us, watching the strange bipedal creatures going about their daily routines on some remote colony world. They looked so ordinary, so breakable. The hegemony had been expanding for 3,000 cycles, absorbing or eliminating every species that stood in our way. These humans would be just another footnote in our glorious conquest. Their technology seems adequate, I admitted, watching their crude but functional spacecraft dock at orbital stations. But nothing we haven't seen before. Adequate. Zerk's eye stalks swayed with mirth. Kex, they still use chemical propulsion for atmospheric flight. They are barely past the primitive combustion stage. That was 6 months ago. 6 months before everything changed. 6 months before I learned that underestimating humans was the kind of mistake that could end civilizations. The attack on New Geneva Colony was supposed to be routine, a simple demonstration of hegemony power to discourage human expansion into our territory. Admiral Thox had selected it specifically because it was isolated, lightly defended, and home to roughly 2 million humans. A nice, clean surgical strike that would send the appropriate message without requiring significant resources that I was assigned to the observation vessel, recording everything for the hegemony archives. Standard procedure, really. Document the conquest, catalog the resources, file the reports. I'd done it dozens of times before. Beginning orbital bombardment in 30 seconds, announced Captain Rexel from the bridge of our dreadnought. His voice carried that particular tone of bored professionalism that comes from years of routine extermination. All vessels, maintain formation and prepare for mop-up operations. I watched through the sensor feeds as our plasma cannons charged. The human colony spread out below us like a small, glowing infection on the planet's surface. Cities, farms, industrial complexes, all of it about to become radioactive dust. The humans had tried to evacuate, of course. Their ships were fleeing in every direction like startled insects. But there was nowhere to run. We'd surrounded the system completely. Firing sequence initiated. Rexel announced. The bombardment lasted exactly 17 minutes and 43 seconds. I know because I timed it. Professional habit, you understand. When the plasma streams finally ceased, there was nothing left but glowing craters and ash. 2 million humans gone. Their colony erased. Their ships vaporized. Mission accomplished. Captain Rexel reported to Admiral Thox. New Geneva Colony has been eliminated. No survivors detected. That's where we made our first mistake. We assumed no survivors meant no witnesses. But humans, as I would soon learn, are very good at hiding, very good at escaping, and absolutely exceptional at holding grudges. The response came exactly 37 days later. I was in my quarters, reviewing the New Geneva operation reports for the final archive submission, when the emergency alarms began screaming. The sound was different from our usual battle station's alert. This was the kind of alarm that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. All personnel to emergency stations. Admiral Thox's voice boomed through the communication systems. Unknown vessels detected at the edge of the system. Classification, uncertain. Uncertain? That was unusual. Our sensors could identify and classify any known vessel type within seconds. I abandoned my reports and rushed to the observation deck, my claws clicking against the metal deck plating in my haste. What I saw when I reached the sensor station made my breathing slits clamp shut in shock ships. Hundreds of them, but not like any human vessels we'd encountered before. These were sleek, angular things that seemed to bend light around their hulls. They moved with impossible precision, maintaining formations that would have required split-second coordination across vast distances. "Sir," stammered Sensor Operator Grex, his voice trembling with disbelief, "they're not showing up on our conventional sensors. We are only detecting them because of gravitational displacement." "That's impossible," snarled Admiral Thox, his spinal ridges flaring with agitation. "Humans don't have stealth technology." But apparently, they did. The first salvo came without warning. One moment, space was empty except for the strange gravitational signatures. The next moment, beams of coherent energy were carving through our outer patrol ships like they were made of soft clay. "Return fire," Admiral Thox roared. "All batteries, open fire." Our plasma cannons unleashed their deadly payload toward the human fleet. I watched the sensors, expecting to see the satisfying explosions that always followed when our weapons found their targets. Instead, I saw something that chilled my internal temperature by several degrees. The humans were dodging, not just maneuvering away from our fire, but actually predicting where our shots would be and moving their ships to safety before the plasma bolts even arrived. It was as if they could see into the future. "How are they doing that?" Grex whispered, his eye stalks trembling with fear. I was wondering the same thing when the second wave of human fire arrived. This time, they weren't aiming for our ships. They were aiming for our weapon systems. Surgical precision strikes that disabled our plasma cannons without destroying the vessels themselves. In less than 5 minutes, our entire battle group had been effectively declawed. "Communications incoming," announced our signals officer. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Admiral Thox commanded, though his voice had lost some of its usual authority. The holographic display flickered to life, and suddenly I was staring at a human face. It was a female, I thought, though their species dimorphism was subtle compared to ours. She had short, dark hair and eyes that looked like chips of ice. When she spoke, her voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "This is Admiral Rebecca Torres of the Terran Defense Fleet," she said, and I could hear the barely controlled rage beneath her composed exterior. "You destroyed New Geneva Colony. You killed 2 million civilians, including children. You thought there would be no consequences." Admiral Thox's mandibles clicked nervously. "Human, you are in violation of hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Torres smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Consequences?" she repeated, and for the first time, I heard actual emotion in her voice. Cold, calculating fury. "Oh, Admiral, you have no idea what consequences look like. But you are about to learn." The human fleet began to move, and I realized that everything we'd seen so far had just been a warm-up. These ships weren't just faster and more maneuverable than anything we'd encountered. They were operating on principles of physics that our scientists insisted were impossible. "Sir," Grex reported, his voice cracking with strain, "they are generating some kind of field around our ships. It's interfering with our life support systems." I looked at my personal atmosphere monitor and felt my blood chill. The oxygen levels in my breathing apparatus were dropping. Not rapidly, but steadily. The humans weren't trying to kill us quickly. They were slowly suffocating us. "What do you want?" Admiral Thox demanded, his earlier bravado replaced by naked desperation. "I want you to send a message to your hegemony," Admiral Torres replied. "Tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that for every human life taken, there will be a reckoning. Tell them that we are no longer the primitive species you thought you could bully. You are bluffing." Admiral Thox snarled, though his spinal ridges were now flat against his back in the universal hegemony sign of submission. "You can't have developed such technology so quickly." Admiral Torres' smile widened, and I saw something in her eyes that made my internal temperature drop another few degrees. It was the look of someone who was enjoying themselves far more than they should. "Admiral," she said softly, "you attacked New Geneva 37 days ago. In those 37 days, humanity has made some remarkable advances. We have had excellent motivation, you see, and we have had help." "Help?" Admiral Thox's voice was barely a whisper now. "Oh yes," Admiral Torres confirmed. It turns out that when you commit genocide against humans, the survivors become very creative, very determined, and very, very angry. Some of our best scientists were on New Geneva, Admiral. Their families died in your attack. Do you know what brilliant, grief-stricken humans are capable of when they have unlimited resources and a single-minded focus on revenge? The life support readings were getting worse. I could see crew members beginning to gasp and struggle as their breathing apparatus failed to provide adequate atmosphere. But the humans weren't killing us. They were demonstrating, showing us exactly how helpless we were. "This is your warning," Admiral Torres continued. "Return to your hegemony masters. Tell them that humanity is no longer prey. Tell them that if they want a war, we will give them one. But tell them also that if they choose to leave us alone, we will leave them alone. The choice is theirs." The field around our ships suddenly dissipated, and our life support systems returned to normal. I gasped, drawing in precious atmosphere as my breathing slits reopened. "You have 24 hours to leave this system," Admiral Torres announced. "After that, we will assume you have made your choice." The transmission ended, and the human fleet simply vanished. One moment they were there, surrounding us like predators around wounded prey. The next moment, our sensors showed nothing but empty space. "Sir," Grex asked tentatively. "Orders." Admiral Thox stared at the empty display for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow, defeated. "Set course for hegemony space," he commanded. "Maximum speed." As our ships limped away from the system, I found myself thinking about everything I'd witnessed. The humans had demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist. They'd showed mercy when they could have simply destroyed us. And they delivered a message that would shake the hegemony to its core. But more than that, they'd revealed something about their species that our intelligence reports had completely missed. Humans weren't just another primitive species to be conquered and absorbed. They were something else entirely. Something dangerous, something that remembered. The return trip to hegemony space took 6 days. 6 days of uncomfortable silence as everyone processed what had happened. 6 days of Admiral Thox staring at status reports without really seeing them. 6 days of growing dread as we all began to understand the implications. When we finally arrived at Command Station Alpha, the news of our encounter had already spread. Admiral Thox was immediately summoned to appear before the High Council, and I was ordered to prepare a complete tactical analysis of the human capabilities we'd observed. That I spent the next week writing reports, analyzing sensor data, and trying to quantify exactly how outclassed we'd been. The numbers were sobering. The human ships had moved at velocities that should have torn them apart. They generated energy fields that violated several fundamental laws of physics. They demonstrated sensor capabilities that made our best technology look like primitive instruments. But the most disturbing part wasn't their technology. It was their restraint. They could have destroyed our entire battle group without effort. Instead, they'd chosen to send a message that suggested a level of strategic thinking and long-term planning that made them even more dangerous than their impossible ships. The High Council's response, when it came, was exactly what I'd expected, and exactly what I'd feared. "Impossible," declared High Counselor Vrak, his massive form dominating the council chamber. "No species develops such advanced technology in mere days. These humans must have had outside assistance. Find out who is helping them and eliminate the threat." "With respect, High Counselor," I said, knowing I was risking my career by speaking up, "our analysis suggests this technology is genuinely human in origin. The design principles, the tactical applications, even the mercy they showed us, it all bears the hallmarks of human psychology and engineering philosophy." High Counselor Vrak's eye stalks swiveled toward me with predatory focus. "Are you suggesting that these primitive creatures developed faster-than-light stealth technology and reality manipulation weapons in 37 days? I'm suggesting that we may have severely underestimated their capabilities," I replied carefully. "And their motivation." The council erupted into angry clicking and chittering. The idea that the hegemony could have miscalculated so badly was apparently unthinkable. But I'd seen the sensor readings. I'd watched their ships dance between our plasma bolts like they were moving through water. I'd heard the cold fury in Admiral Torres' voice. The humans weren't primitive anymore, if they ever really had been. Regardless of their capabilities, High Counselor Vrack announced, his voice cutting through the noise of the council chamber. They have challenged hegemony authority. That cannot be tolerated. Admiral Grexel, prepare the Third Fleet for immediate deployment. We will show these humans what real power looks like. I felt my breathing slits clamped shut in horror. The Third Fleet was our largest battle group. 40 dreadnoughts, 200 cruisers, and support vessels numbering in the thousands. It was the kind of force we used to crack heavily fortified worlds or eliminate entire star systems. High Counselor, I said, my voice barely steady. Perhaps we should consider the humans' offer of peaceful coexistence. They demonstrated remarkable restraint when they could have simply destroyed us. That suggests they might be open to negotiation. The chamber fell silent. Every eye stalk in a room turned toward me, and I could feel the weight of their attention like a physical pressure. Negotiation? High Counselor Vrack's voice was soft, dangerous. Observer Kex, are you suggesting that the hegemony should negotiate with a species that has openly defied our authority? I'm suggesting that the humans have capabilities we don't fully understand, I replied, knowing I was probably ending my career, and that underestimating them once has already cost us a battle group's worth of dignity. Perhaps caution would be wise. High Counselor Vrack was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the finality of a death sentence. The Third Fleet will depart in 72 hours, he announced. Their target will be the Sol system, the human homeworld. We will end this threat at its source. As the council session ended and the members dispersed to their various duties, I remained in my seat, staring at the tactical display that showed the locations of human colonies throughout the galaxy. There were hundreds of them now, scattered across dozens of star systems. A thriving, expanding civilization that had grown from nothing to galactic significance in just a few centuries and 72 hours. All of that would be ashes, unless the humans had more surprises waiting for us. And given what I'd already witnessed, I was beginning to suspect they did. 72 hours later, I found myself aboard the flagship of the Third Fleet, watching Admiral Grexel pace the command deck like a caged predator. The massive warship, Destroyer of Worlds, lived up to its name. Its hull bristled with enough firepower to glass entire continents, and its escort fleet stretched beyond the limits of visual sensors. This time will be different, Admiral Grexel muttered, his claws clicking against the deck plating. 40 dreadnoughts against their parlor tricks. Let's see how their stealth technology handles real military might. I kept my doubts to myself. The sensor readings from our previous encounter suggested the humans had progressed far beyond parlor tricks, but the Admiral wasn't interested in my analysis. He'd read my reports, dismissed them as exaggerated, and proceeded with his own tactical assessment, which basically amounted to shoot everything until it stops moving. Approaching the Sol system perimeter, announced Navigation Officer Strex. Human detection buoys are, sir, they are not even trying to hide them. The approach lanes are marked with warning beacons. Admiral Grexel's mandibles clicked with amusement. Arrogant primitives. They think their little light show frightened us into submission. Show them what real power looks like. Begin the advance. The Third Fleet moved into formation, our massive dreadnoughts taking point while the cruiser squadron spread out in attack wings. It was a textbook assault formation designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer concentrated firepower. We'd used it successfully against hundreds of worlds. Sir, Strex reported, his voice puzzled. We are receiving a transmission from the humans. It's Admiral Torres again. Put her through, Admiral Grexel commanded. Let's hear what desperate plea she's prepared this time. The holographic display activated, and Admiral Torres appeared before us. But something was different. The cold fury I'd seen in her eyes before had been replaced by something far more unsettling. She looked disappointed. Admiral Grexel, she said, and her tone was that of a teacher addressing a particularly slow student. I see the hegemony didn't understand our previous message. That's unfortunate. Your previous message was received and rejected. Admiral Grexel snarled. Surrender now, and we might allow some of your species to survive as laborers. Admiral Torres shook her head slowly. Admiral, you are about to make the same mistake twice. But this time, the consequences will be permanent. Enough talk, Admiral Grexel roared. All ships, open fire. Eliminate every human vessel in this system. The Third Fleet unleashed its combined fury. 40 dreadnoughts, firing simultaneously, created a light show that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Plasma streams, antimatter torpedoes, and particle beams converged on the inner solar system where Earth waited. For a moment, I thought we'd actually succeeded. The sensor readings showed massive energy discharges as our weapons found their targets. But then the displays cleared, and I saw something that made my breathing apparatus malfunction. The human homeworld was still there, intact, undamaged. What? Admiral Grexel stared at the readings in disbelief. How is that possible? Defensive field generators, Admiral Torres explained calmly. Planetary scale. We developed them in week 2 after New Geneva. Did you really think we'd leave Earth undefended? But the defensive fields weren't the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. Space around our fleet began to change. Reality itself seemed to ripple and bend, like looking through water. Our sensors went insane, registering impossible readings that defied every law of physics we knew. Sir, Weapons Officer Crix shouted over the alarms. Something's interfering with our targeting systems. I can't lock onto anything, and you won't be able to. Admiral Torres continued. Space-time manipulation field. Another week 2 development. You are now operating in a localized area where the normal rules of physics are flexible. I watched in horrified fascination as our plasma bolts began curving in impossible directions, some of them actually reversing course and heading back toward our own ships. Our antimatter torpedoes simply vanished into spatial anomalies that appeared and disappeared without warning. This is impossible, Admiral Grexel screamed. No species can manipulate space-time. We couldn't either, Admiral Torres admitted, until you gave us proper motivation. Amazing what grief can accomplish when it's focused properly. Dr. Lisa Park, one of our quantum physicists from New Geneva, lost her entire family in your attack. She's been working 18-hour days since then. I think you'd be impressed by her innovations. The spatial distortions were getting worse. I watched 3 of our cruisers simply fold in on themselves as the space around them compressed beyond the tolerance of their hull structures. The crews didn't even have time to scream. Sir, Navigation Officer Strex reported, his voice trembling. We are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. They are not ships, sir. They are installations. The tactical display updated, revealing the true scope of human preparations. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid larger than a city block had been converted into a fortress. Energy readings suggested weapons platforms that could crack moons, shield generators that could protect entire worlds, and manufacturing facilities working at impossible speeds. 37 days, Admiral Torres said softly. That's how long we had to prepare for your inevitable response. 37 days of every human scientist, engineer, and manufacturer working toward a single goal: survival and revenge. How did you build all this so quickly? I found myself asking, my professional curiosity overriding my terror. Admiral Torres smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in the expression. You destroyed a colony full of our brightest minds, Observer Kex. Their colleagues took that personally. When human brilliance is fueled by grief and rage, we become very creative very quickly. It doesn't matter, Admiral Grexel shouted, though his voice cracked with desperation. We will destroy it all, every last human installation. With what weapons? Admiral Torres asked mildly. I looked at our tactical display and felt my internal temperature plummet. Our weapons were gone. Not damaged, not disabled, gone. The space-time distortions had somehow erased them from existence, leaving smooth hull plating where our plasma cannons had been moments before. Now, Admiral Torres continued. Let me show you what human engineering can accomplish when we are properly motivated. The stars went out. I don't mean they were blocked or hidden. I mean they simply ceased to exist in our local area of space. The background radiation, the distant galaxies, even the cosmic background radiation, all of it vanished, leaving us floating in absolute nothingness. Localized reality bubble, Admiral Torres explained conversationally. Dr. Park's greatest achievement. We have isolated your fleet in a pocket dimension where we control the fundamental forces. Physics works the way we want it to work. In this impossible space, human ships began to appear. But these weren't the sleek vessels we'd encountered before. These were geometric impossibilities, craft that seemed to exist in more dimensions than my eyes could process. They moved through space like thoughts through a mind, teleporting instantly from position to position. The thing about pocket dimensions, Admiral Torres continued, is that we can adjust the flow of time inside them. From your perspective, this conversation has lasted about 10 minutes. From Earth's perspective, it's been 3 days. We have had time to bring up the heavy equipment. Heavy equipment. The human ships weren't ships at all, I realized. They were weapons platforms built around technologies that shouldn't exist. Devices that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolutes. Last chance, Admiral Torres said, and her voice carried the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. Surrender now, and we will allow you to return to hegemony space with a message. Refuse, and you'll provide a different kind of message. Admiral Grexel's response was predictable. Never. The hegemony does not surrender to primitive. His words cut off as one of the human weapon platforms demonstrated its capabilities. A beam of coherent nothingness lanced out, struck our flagship's sister ship, and a massive dreadnought simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not vaporized, erased. The space it had occupied was now perfectly empty, as if the ship had never been built. Entropy reversal beam, Admiral Torres explained clinically. It accelerates the heat death of matter, essentially fast-forwarding the target to the end of the universe. Very clean, very final. The remaining ships of the Third Fleet tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run in this pocket dimension. The human weapons platforms moved with casual precision, erasing vessels one by one. Not quickly, not mercifully. They were making a point. Stop, Admiral Grexel screamed. We surrender. We surrender. Too late for that, Admiral Torres replied, and her voice had gone cold again. You had your chance for surrender. Now you get to be an example. One by one, the greatest fleet in hegemony history was systematically erased from existence. 40 dreadnoughts, reduced to empty space. 200 cruisers, wiped from reality. Thousands of support vessels, gone as if they'd never been. When only our observation ship remained, Admiral Torres spoke again. Observer Kex, she said, and I realized she'd known my name all along. You're going to return to your hegemony masters. You're going to tell them exactly what happened here. And you're going to deliver a message. What message? I whispered, my voice barely functional. Humanity is no longer prey, she said simply. We are no longer victims. We're no longer a species that can be bullied or exterminated without consequences. The hegemony can choose peace or it can choose extinction, but it cannot choose to ignore us. The pocket dimension dissolved around us, and suddenly we were back in normal space. Earth hung before us, blue and beautiful and completely untouched by the battle that had just erased the most powerful fleet in known space. Our sensors showed no trace of the human installations, no evidence of the impossible weapons platforms. IT was as if none of it had ever existed, except for the complete absence of the Third Fleet. Go home, Observer Kex, Admiral Torres said, her image beginning to fade. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them what humanity has become. And tell them that this is their only warning. The transmission ended, leaving us alone in the silent void where the greatest military force in hegemony history had been obliterated without firing a single effective shot. The return trip took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of writing reports that I knew would be dismissed as impossible. 2 weeks of trying to quantify capabilities that defied quantification. 2 weeks of growing certainty that the hegemony was about to make a decision that would end everything. When I finally stood before the High Council again, delivering my report on the complete destruction of the Third Fleet, the reaction was exactly what I'd expected. Impossible, High Counselor Vrak declared. No species could develop such capabilities so rapidly. Nevertheless, I replied, the Third Fleet is gone, erased, and the humans are still there. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some members demanded immediate mobilization of the entire hegemony fleet. Others suggested negotiation. A few, the wisest among them, proposed complete withdrawal from human space. High Counselor Vrak silenced them all with a gesture. The hegemony has never retreated, he announced. We will not start now. Prepare the Grand Fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. We will show these humans what total war looks like. As the council session ended and plans began for the mobilization of every military asset the hegemony possessed, I found myself thinking about Admiral Torres' final words. This was their only warning. The humans had just erased the Third Fleet from existence using technologies that shouldn't be possible. And they'd done it as a demonstration. A mercy, a final chance for peace. The hegemony was about to reject that chance that I spent the next few days writing my final report. Not the sanitized version for the official archives, but the truth. A complete account of human capabilities, human restraint, and human warnings. I sealed it in my personal files with instructions to transmit it to every hegemony world in the event of my death. Because I was beginning to suspect that when the humans tired of showing mercy, there wouldn't be anyone left to read it. 3 months later, the Grand Fleet departed for human space. Every ship the hegemony had ever built, every weapon we'd ever developed, the combined military might of 300 worlds gathered for one final assault. They found the Sol system exactly as I'd left it. Blue skies, green continents, peaceful orbital traffic. The entire Grand Fleet was gone within 17 minutes. The only trace of what happened was a single transmission, broadcast on all frequencies throughout hegemony space. Admiral Torres, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a ship that hurt to look at directly. The hegemony chose extinction, she said simply. We offered peace. You chose war. This is what war with humanity looks like. Behind her, I could see a star going nova, not naturally, but with mechanical precision. Stellar engineering on a scale that made planets look like pebbles. Every hegemony military installation, every fleet base, every weapons manufacturing facility, Admiral Torres continued. Gone. Your civilian populations are unharmed. Your worlds are intact. But your capacity for aggression has been permanently removed. The transmission showed the impossible truth. Hegemony space, pacified overnight. A 1,000-year empire, disarmed by a species they dismissed as primitive just months before. Humanity remembers, Admiral Torres concluded. We remember New Geneva. We remember every colony world you have destroyed, every species you have enslaved, every act of cruelty you have committed. And we remember that you had a choice. The transmission ended with coordinates for a dozen worlds where hegemony refugees could relocate. Worlds set aside by humanity for former hegemony citizens who wanted to start over. The humans had won a war by ending it. They'd conquered an empire by showing mercy. They'd achieved victory by refusing to become the monsters they'd fought against. And they'd done it all because someone had made the mistake of killing their people that I never saw Admiral Torres again. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm reviewing intelligence reports from the new human territories, I remember her final words to me in that pocket dimension. Tell them what humanity has become. I've spent the last 5 years trying to do exactly that. Documenting the rise of the Terran Federation, cataloging their impossible technologies, tracking their expansion across former hegemony space. They have become gardeners of galaxies, protectors of the weak, guardians against the darkness. They remember every injustice, but they choose mercy over vengeance when possible. They have become exactly what the universe needed. And it all started because someone thought they could bully the pink, squishy creatures with their pathetic single hearts and their ridiculous obsession with coffee. The humans had the last laugh after all.